Welcome to Something to Say, where we bring voices from diverse backgrounds who will share their unique stories and perspectives on finding their passion and provide insights on how you can find yours. Join us as host Greg DeShields guides us through this enlightening journey.
Welcome to Something to Say podcast, a unique platform that amplifies the voices of individuals from various backgrounds sharing their passion. I'm your host, Greg DeShields, and I'm pleased to bring you another exciting episode. Thank you for joining us today. And today is a very special podcast. We feature Victor Simmons, who's now an author of The Presence-Driven Leader, a transformational guide for anyone ready to lead with authenticity, courage, and conviction, regardless of their title. Drawing from 3 generations of leadership lessons and Victor's own rise from hospitality front lines to the corporate boardroom, he shows how real influence doesn't come from authority, it comes from presence. Through deep personal storytelling and practical framework, Victor takes readers from his family's humble Alabama roots to the global stage of hospitality leadership. Along the way, he reveals how his great-grandfather's grit, his grandfather's ingenuity, and his father's quiet excellence aboard Air Force One shaped his belief that true leadership is about who you are when no one is watching. Blending research, lived experience, and actionable tools, the presence-driven leader introduces a framework built around 3 important pillars: coaching, influence, and conviction. So, Victor, welcome to Something to Say. And I should say that for you, this is a return visit. So, welcome for your second episode of Something to Say podcast.
Greg, thank you so much. In fact, I got to tell the viewers that, aside from being on here a second time, I know we worked together on a partnership back in the days when I was at Wyndham. It is always a treat to spend time with you, and to be welcomed back a second time I'm just honored. So, and grateful. Thank you.
Well, I always look fondly back on those days when we were working together on different hotel projects, because you're probably one of the most innovative and creative people to
Oh my
be a
gosh.
bit of a problem solver. I know, I'm just getting you warmed up for the interview, right?
Well, I'll take it. I will take it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well,
Very kind.
compared to where we were when we spoke with you the last time, you have a new book, and I am, well, number one, I'm very excited for you, but number two, I'm also extremely jealous. But before we begin, I do want to extend my congratulations, because there's a lot that we want to take a deep dive into, and I'm sure you'll share some of the insights about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So happy about it. Yeah. Thank you.
So we know that publishing a book probably took a lot of time, a lot of effort, reading and listening and taking criticism and insights and all those kind of things from people.
Yep.
And we want to learn as much of that about you as possible. But I think more for our audience that maybe didn't have a chance to hear your first interview, or maybe are hearing it for the second time, the get to know you questions that we share with the audience helps to give a better perspective about you. So, are you up for a new few pre-interview questions?
Absolutely. Bring it on. Now I'm going to be out on the speaking circuit, so I got to be ready. So this will be
Yeah.
good practice. Bring it on.
All right. So, first one is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
I think this is in the book. I'd have to go back and look, but it is something that has always stuck with me. Something that my grandfather, Willie Fate, said to me early on, and it's always stayed with me, which is you get more with honey than you do with vinegar.
Mm,
And that's just always how he has been. And so there are moments, especially in hospitality, when there is stuff going down, it's pretty serious stuff, and customer interactions or employee interactions. And I just go back to that moment and think about that, and that it has always served me well that I use honey instead of vinegar in those situations. And I'm usually able to prevail.
Well, and I've seen you in action, so it's pretty clear that that advice is still stuck with you and probably is part of the DNA of the way that you do business.
Yeah.
All right. So another question, and this one I thought was extremely appropriate. So, what would the title of your autobiography be? We know what your book is, but
Oh
what
my
about an
gosh.
autobiography?
Oh my gosh. I'm terrible at this, but the what comes to my mind is maybe it's a terrible title, but it is me, is from instincts to practice. And
Ah,
that is, I've been doing this a long time, so I do have a lot of experience, no doubt. But I'm usually going off of instincts, and I have a way of looking at the landscape of a workplace, for example, and see what's going on. And my gut is telling me, oh, this is what's happening. And I can also see what's going to be happening next.
hmm.
And so I'm usually able to get in and make a play, if you will, and be able to offset whatever I saw coming down the lane. And so I'm able to use my instincts, put what I've learned into practice, and that usually again helps us win the day.
Well, when I wrote that question and I was applying it to you, in my mind, I thought you were going to say a man of many talents.
Ah, yeah, I that would be a good, you know what? I actually like that one better.
And as a
That is
backup,
true.
I also thought about a man of many titles.
Yeah. I thought about this. I was on another show last year, and the question was, as a child, what did you do as a child that you continue to do today, or what makes you where you are today from being a child? And I grew up on a military installation, Air Force base. And you had to be, if you weren't in school, you had to be in some form of an activity of some sort. And if you weren't in that activity, then you were doing chores at home. So you were always on the go. And to this day, a lot of times I drive my wife crazy because we'll go on a trip and I want to do this and I want to make sure we do this and we need to do that and we have to do this. And she's like, can we just
Just
can we just do a couple of
a
things?
few things, right?
I'm just built that way. Always active.
Yeah. I was always asked this next question and found it interesting that I always had a go-to answer. But for you, if you could rename yourself, what name would you pick?
It's gonna sound weird. I would say not the name, it's Craig. I would name myself Craig. And I say that because I did do that whenever I was doing something mischievous or something sinister in my very younger years. I would go by the name of Craig. And that was my fake name, but that actually is my middle name. That's why I say it sounds
Ah,
weird, is
cool.
that is my middle name. But I think Craig is a cool name. And in fact, that's what my son, I have Junior, my firstborn is Junior, and that's what he goes by. We call him Craig.
Oh,
And I
wow.
just think he's a cool dude
Yeah.
and it's a cool name.
Wow. I always wanted to be called Robert, and for the longest, I couldn't figure out why. And later, I realized that when I mentioned it to my mother, we were on a long trip once, and I mentioned it,
Mhm.
and she said, "That's so odd." She said, "Because when you were first born, my mother and my father were traveling, and they had us stay with my uncle Robert."
Oh,
So I'm assuming
fascinating.
somewhere or another that must have stuck. I mean, he was actually a pretty cool guy, but actually, believe it or not, I actually had an Uncle Victor who was my best uncle
Oh,
in the world. Yeah, he was
very cool.
amazing, an amazing guy. So there's a lot of respect that I had for the name Victor. But
Ah,
in the way of sticking out for me, I always thought Robert.
that's
All
why we're always hitting it off.
right. So, just to go a little bit deeper, what's your top strategy for success? You've had so many ways of approaching business, but what's your real top strategy that kind of moves you into this world? And I got to be honest with you, just the idea of writing a book is a perfect example of how that strategy must really lead you to success for something so significant.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it's about 6 or 7 things that I do that I think have helped me as a business person, as a leader in hospitality and in the community for that matter. And the first thing I like to do is understand whoever I'm working with, if it's somebody on my team or someone that I'm partnering with on something, I want to understand what motivates them and what drives them, because I find that if I understand that, I could use that and find a way for us to be able to continue to move forward. And then I also try to make sure that I ingratiate myself to that person or that team to make sure they really understand me and where I'm coming from. And I think when that happens, there's trust that starts to happen when you do those first two things. And then when you do that, for like from a team perspective, or again, someone that I'm working with, whatever their problem is, I want to help them solve that problem. So teams that work for me, I want to understand whatever they come to me with, I'm going to solve them initially, but then I'm going to, once I do that a few times, now I'm going to become a coach,
Mhm.
because I'd rather them solve the problems on their own. So then I start coaching, and I'm a cheerleader at the same time, because I believe that if you are cheering them on, you're giving them great recognition. There are times, especially in a work situation where folks are reporting to me, where I might have to get into them a little bit. And I might have to say, hey, that's not a good job. But if I have been catching them doing things right, if I've been celebrating and giving them their props, giving them their flowers more often, the few times that I have to say, hey, I'm not happy about that. And that happens, actually, I said a few, but I am very particular about things, very meticulous about things. So I may come to them and say, hey, we need to correct this. Hey, we need to course correct. But I think because of what I've done on those first six steps, I think that usually helps us get across the goal line. And then finally, I love to have fun. So we're always having fun along the way.
Well, I'm a big believer in terms of the use of strategy. And for me, I think it's that idea of being able to set goals and objectives, and especially when they're for you personally, and how you can begin to judge your own ability to be a success that may not be based upon some external measure, but how you set whatever the goal line is for you. And for me, I think that's what it's been. But
Yeah.
this question I came across, and I thought it was so interesting to kind of ask someone, and we never want to throw anyone under the bus, but who do you consider to be your biggest competitor?
uh, me. Me. I've had this question before, and yeah, it's me. I'm worrying about what needs to get accomplished
Mm,
and how I'm going to get it. And when early on, I was in a role called convention services, where you're putting on the events for groups that come into your hotel. And we would put off, as from a catering standpoint, we're always putting off these great theme parties. And I was always trying to top that theme party the following year. And when I had a returning customer, I would want to one up the experience that they had the year before.
mhm.
And so I'm always trying to do better on whatever it is. And I took that with me into human resources and into diversity, equity, and inclusion. So any kind of programming, any kind of initiatives that I'm doing,
Mhm.
I, at the end of the year, analyze that. And then when we start putting the programs together for that incoming year, I want to improve on that. So it's always been, I'm always my biggest competitor.
For me, it's always been those who've ever said what I can't do.
Mm,
Those are the people that I always feel are my biggest competitor, because that will never be what defines me in terms of what someone says I can't do. And I'm going to compete on that in ways that are maybe a lot more strategic than the obvious. And
yeah,
for
yeah,
that, yeah, it's the naysayers are my biggest competitor, and I'm always ready to take them on. So we could do that as a whole nother interview, but I
yeah,
appreciate how you brought
yeah.
that up. All right,
Yeah.
so somewhat of an obvious one, but we've never really kind of thought of it as it relies to you or applies to you. But what do you wish you knew before you began your career?
Right now, yeah, with the book, I'd say I'm at the pinnacle of my career, and I've had a lot of great success without being braggadocious. I've had a lot of great success. And along the way, I've had some slips and some falls. I've bruised my knees, scuffed my knees along the way. But those are badges of honor to me. And so there wasn't anything that I could point to that I'd say, gosh, I wish I knew that. There is something late in my career, actually, that I do look at. And, when I was as a human resources director, I was a champion for everyone in the building
Mhm.
and a champion of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But it wasn't until, and I started in 2000 in human resources, but it wasn't until 18 years later that I got into DEI. And there is so much more to that whole body of work, as you know as well, that I didn't know, and I wish I had known that early on. That whole body of work. If I had to pick one thing, I'd say just
Mhm.
I was using my lens and my experiences to guide the team, and we had a lot of great success. But there were probably a couple of things in that I wish I knew that might have made that much more of a difference.
Wow. For me, it was pretty much growing up as a boomer, right? And as a
Mm,
boomer, I was so wedded to that perception of, you go to work for a company and you work for them for 10 or 15 years, and you'll work as hard as you can. And you know that at some point in time, you're going to be acknowledged by that hard work and you'll get that promotion and you'll be able to move to that next step. And, living in that transition from a work environment that was pretty much representative of boomer culture to more of a millennial culture or Gen Z culture, the ability to maybe had moved from one place to another without as much staying time would probably be the thing that I would have appreciated more.
yeah,
Because tenure was a big thing, but I also could see where if I had had maybe 5 years as opposed to 10 years at one place, or 8 years as opposed to 14 years at one place, that probably would have been a whole lot better in terms of my options.
yeah. Well, let me tell you something that's interesting about that. First of all, I am surprised to hear you say you're a boomer. I'm a Gen Xer, and that just surprises the heck out of me that you say that. But the more interesting thing is that I was of that same opinion. There were folks in my generation who were moving around, but I still had the mindset of, let me go to La Quinta Resort and Club, first hotel I was at, and I was there almost 13 years. But my plan was to ride that out to retirement at that one particular hotel, and it took me a dozen years to figure it out to make another move.
Yeah, interesting that. But yes, I'm a boomer.
Yeah,
Don't tell anyone. All right, maybe a few hundred people, right? All
yeah,
right. So let's talk about industry. You still have the pulse of what's really happening in the tourism and hospitality industry, and we've talked about it before, but I just want to do a follow up with you. So, can you talk about some of the current misconceptions that you're currently seeing that we should try and clear up?
yeah. You did ask me that, and it's the same. It's the same question because it drives me nuts. I still see it. Is that I will see on social media, someone will say HR is there to protect the company. And that is just BS. That is BS, at least from my point of view. As an HR practitioner, I am an advocate for my team members. I'm an advocate for the senior leadership in the building and or organization. I'm an advocate for the organization, and in some cases, depending on your business setup, I'm an advocate for ownership as well, which is sometimes at odds with the management team. And so my goal is to make sure that we all win at the end of the day.
Mhm.
And sometimes you can't do that so that everybody wins. But my goal in that case is to try to mitigate loss, which is usually what you're doing anyway in business, is trying to mitigate loss. And I'm trying to mitigate loss for everyone. So I think that is a poor practitioner that comes off that way,
Mhm.
that appears to be protecting the company.
Mhm.
There are times when you have to do that, but when that occurs, you can be transparent about that, and in your communication style should allow you to be able to let the team know, hey, look, this is the best course of action. Usually the fallacy is, or the mistakes that are made, is because they're trying to hold this mystery, or they're trying to hold back information, and then that ends up allowing people to fill in the gaps with usually misinformation
Mhm.
and assuming the wrong thing. And so I think the biggest misconception in the world of HR is that we're not there to protect, we're there to protect everybody.
Hmm.
Bottom line.
Provide that level of clarity and understanding. All right, so
Yeah.
my next question really centers upon the continued use of technology and innovation. So, from where we were before, there's been a whole lot of new stuff that's even been entered into the market. But are there breakthroughs that you are finding that are pretty exciting, or something that you've really adapted to, that perhaps a year ago was not even on your radar?
Yeah, well, and I think I said something like I wanted to go back and look at the tape on that because I think I said, I don't want to say AI. Everybody's always talking about AI. I said something to that effect. And now I would say that it is AI because it is making such a polarizing impact on the workforce today. There are jobs that are going out and leaving because of AI, but there are more jobs that are coming in because of AI. And I was just a year ago, or even 2 years ago, was talking to my team about making sure that we were ahead of the curve. We were at the tip of that curve on AI to make sure that we understand it for ourselves so that we could be that much more efficient and so that we could be able to inform our workforce and make sure that they're prepared for what is coming. And I use it a great deal in all facets
Mm.
of my business, and I continue to tinker around with it because there is more and more coming that is outdated from just 3 months ago. And so I think that it's going to make a big difference. I think that it's been very helpful for me, and I'm leveraging probably maybe a third of what really
Mm.
is out there available
Mm.
to you, but at least I feel like I have an understanding of what that is. So yeah, I'd say that utilizing it to be that much more efficient, utilizing that to make your day that much easier, and using it as a resource to help understand some of the things that you need to get done, and also using it as a tool to get your things accomplished. It is unbelievable how much more helpful this AI can be for you.
Yeah, and I think, and I 100% agree with you. I have noticed though that there has been more of a rational effort to take into account some of the vulnerability that's associated with it, so that the use of it is done in a responsible way, especially as we look at issues like privacy or ways of maintaining a consistent message of an organization. But the influence that it's had on our industry continues to be a very important and valuable one. So, thanks for your insight about that. But
Yeah,
we're here to talk about your new book, so the presence driven leader, and
yeah.
I'm really excited to talk about that. And I've got some questions from you that really helps us to get a kickoff on it. So, but first, which I didn't need notes about it, I just really wanted to ask you what really inspired you to write a book, and why was it important for you to bring this concept forward now?
Well, I wanted to get my family legacy, so I'll try to be very brief about this. My great grandfather, Bill Simmons, was a sharecropper by day and a moonshiner by night.
Mhm.
And his son, Willie Fate, my grandfather, he held three jobs for 30 years. He was a cook in the Navy Reserve. He was a waiter in room service at a hotel in Akron, Ohio, and he was the head maitre d' at Firestone Tires in their executive lounge. And he did those for 30 years. And then, on less than an eighth grade education, he built a very successful catering company in Akron. And then my father was the first Black steward on Air Force One.
Mm.
And I felt like those stories should be out there. And I had been approached a few times about writing a book, and I didn't really have an appetite to do it, but I was more interested in telling my dad's story, and this was a way to do that. And what I learned in thinking about that was the type of leader that I am was really built from those three men, and being on a even high school
Mm.
championship football team. really forged how I am as a leader. And I felt like these things that I do could be helpful in the workplace and in your everyday life
Mhm.
as someone trying to get things accomplished. And I felt it was necessary to get that out and share the secret sauce with the world.
Wow. That's very cool. I mean, it is quite an undertaking, but I like how you led with legacy
Yeah.
because, there is some permanence about it. And that book is going to wind up in someone's library and they're going to say, wow, is this Craig's book? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Is this Victor's book?
Yes.
All
Yes.
right, so listen, I
Absolutely.
want to ask you the next question, which is what do you hope readers will take away after finishing your book? But the first thing I want to ask you is how much does your book cost and where do we get it?
Oh, wow. Gosh. Well, you can get it wherever. I love, authors have said this, and I'm happy to say you can get it wherever books are sold. It's actually not available yet. It's March 3rd is my launch date. And so, but I'm sure we'll drop a link for
Yes.
your viewers and it'll take you to Amazon, I think, on my launch, but it's wherever books are sold. But I love saying this too. If you want an autographed copy, then you need to reach out to me directly and I'll be happy to ship you an autographed copy. Wow. I actually said that on air for the first time. Excited about that. And then I think online you can get it for like just under 20 bucks. You can get it
Okay, that's good.
online. You want an autographed copy, it's going to cost you a few more dollars. It's going to cost you a few more dollars because I got to ship it. So, and then I would want readers to understand this. It's right there in the title. If you're in a workplace and you are drawing the line in the sand with your title, you've already lost.
Mhm,
And so what I think is if you use your influence, and there's a lot of things behind it, you're gonna have to read the book
mhm,
to see what it is. But if you use your influence to be able to guide your team, and if you were doing some of the things that I said before, motivating your team, getting to understand the team, getting the team to understand you, do those things, and then you got to have a good moral grounding
mhm.
and be in your conviction and make decisions on the spot based on your conviction, you're going to win the day and not just only in the workplace, but in your community. And so lead with presence, not your title. You will do very well.
Wow. So this next question about the advice that you would give to people who feel like they really want to write a book, but they're kind of hesitant to share it. So, a couple things came to mind when I was at Temple University. A number of the professors were kind of, tasked with writing a book, and there was
Mm,
one particular professor. It seemed like she was writing her book for I don't know 10 years, and she always began her introduction about my book, my book. And so that's great. I always wonder about individuals who are writing a book. Like, do they start off by saying my book, my book? But we can talk about that in a minute. But so, what would be the advice that you would give someone who feels like they want to write a book, but they're hesitant to share that?
yeah, I think that same thing I think many writers go through is, oh my gosh, is what I have to say, does someone want to hear what I have to say? And I
Mm,
think you have to give yourself grace and understand that you are very unique in this world, and whatever you have to say is powerful enough for many people in the world. You just don't understand, don't realize that.
mhm,
And you got to give yourself some grace and then just take the first step. Take the first step. That's the hardest step, is to take the very first one. And so you got to take that first step in whatever that is. Just start talking into a microphone and recording it. With the tools that we have today, it is so easy to be able to get yourself out there. Before, you'd have to have a publisher. You don't even, you can, I did use a publisher in this case, but you can self publish and it is super easy. And so I would say just take the first step, give yourself some grace, and just keep putting one step in front of the other. And before you know it, you're 5 chapters in.
So, when you were writing your book, did you ever struggle with the title? Like, how did you come up with the title?
That was me. I've always led that way.
Hmm.
I've always been that way. So that was automatically what it was going to be. I have seen right before my very eyes in a employee cafeteria
Hmm.
where I have a GM and I have 7 employees. And right before my very eyes, I see this person who's using their title
Hmm.
and it's just imploding right in front of us all. And I've seen it countless times. And so automatically
You
that
knew.
was going to be the title for
Well,
me.
all right. So since I just closed that I was a boomer, I have to, in this particular case, let you know that I'm sure you've read the book Hotel that was written by Arthur Haley. I was always amazed by that story. There was a connection with the black doctor who was from Philadelphia, who was not able to stay in that hotel because it was, pre-civil rights movement and such. But I always wanted to write the black version of the book Hotel.
Mm,
So, and believe it or not, I actually have the first chapter of it. I started writing it last year, and it was amazing.
awesome.
So I always wanted to identify as the perfect person who should be the general manager of the hotel. So my selection of that person was Valerie Ferguson. I mean, I just felt like for the
Mm,
purpose of this book that is really meant to speak to Black people, what she had done and what she'd accomplished in her career was amazing. But anyway, that's what I wrote. I should send you over the notes of it because it actually
yeah.
pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
well, you've already taken the first step. You obviously have given yourself some grace. Greg, you just need to keep going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, see, I knew this interview was going to be very uplifting and motivating for me, but I have one more question for you before we kind of begin to wrap it up. So, what's next for you as an author? Like, do you see yourself, beginning a series of books, or are you going to become an advocate, or are you going to do a great deal of speaking, or move it to a movie, or like, what do you see as the future?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's all of the above. Because as we've already learned, I do a lot of different things. And so I got to give credit to Bruce Jordan, who really pushed me. What this all started was he was over at my house. We were looking at doing he was going to videotape some training I was doing. And he saw some pictures of my dad on the wall. And he said, you ought to write that story. And it sort of died when he passed away. But as you already know, I decided to do that. So the next book, I have a book that's going to be coming out it's actually going to be ready in another week or so, but we're going to launch it in June in tandem with Father's Day and Juneteenth, which is the Lee F. Simmons story, the first Black steward of Air Force One. So that'll come out in June. And then again, with the pushing of Bruce, I wrote 3 other business books, how to AI proof your career. But the next one will be Leaders Building Leaders. So that's going to come out next year. And I wrote another children's book that will be about my sisters and I growing up with a dad in the military and a creative mom. And so I have that. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of speaking opportunities. Is there a movie? Yes, I think there's going to be a movie behind that. We're going to be shopping for one for sure. I plan to do some speaking on the leadership lab about these tenets that make up a presence driven leader. So we're doing it all. We're doing it all, Greg.
Wow, very cool. Well, listen, I'm glad you allowed us at Something to Say podcast could be a part of helping to promote the book during its launch. And because we've certainly had the ability to be a part of how you've evolved into this particular role, that will be a big promoter of the Presence Driven Leader book.
Thank
So, once again, I know you like to say it. So where will people be able to get the book again, and how much is it going to
you.
cost?
I think it is 18. I believe it's 18.99 on Amazon, and but you can get it anywhere books are sold. You'll be able to get it, or if you want an autograph book, then just reach out to me directly. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm everywhere. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Fanbase. I don't know if you heard about Fanbase. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm everywhere. So
Cool.
reach out to me or on my website. and love to have a conversation like
Well,
this.
just so you know, our post-production director, Mohammed Adnan, is going to take that pitch and make it a 60-second clip. And we'll just keep
Ah,
saying it over and over
love it.
where
I
people get
love it.
fucked. All
I'm
right,
that
so
guy now. Awesome.
I would hate to begin to bring this to a close, but I guess we'd probably be sitting here talking forever. But I think one of the most important questions we like to ask people when we interview is the podcast is entitled, Something to Say. So what do you have to say?
I'd say that I'm talking to leaders. I'm talking to leaders. I'm talking to soon to be leaders in the workplace. And I've said this in my leadership classes all the time. Employees are looking to be led. They want to be led. Even when you talk about, I hear this stuff about, oh, Gen Z, they don't want to work. That's baloney.
Hmm.
They want purpose in the work that they're doing, and you as a leader need to provide that. So lead with presence and not your title, and you will prevail. And you can do that not only again in the workplace, but you can do that in your communities. And I think today, and I sort of alluded to this 2 years ago, in where we are today, just think about what's happening in the US and what we see leaders, forget what side of the aisle you're on. Just look at how we're leading today and leading the US. And so I just think that if more of us were leading with our presence, we're looking at how we are motivating each other, we're looking at understanding each other, I think we will do much better as a community, as a society. So I will leave it at that.
Wow. Well, I knew you were going to leave us with some inspiring words and certainly reinforcing the passion that you've been able to outline in your book. And I just once again want to be amongst the first to congratulate you on the book and let you know that we'll be doing everything possible to make sure people are very familiar with where they can get it and what they
Awesome.
can enjoy after they read it. So, Victor, thank you so much.
Thank you. Real pleasure. Awesome to do this. Thanks so much.
So, audience, that's a wrap for this episode of Something to Say podcast. And we encourage you to stay tuned for more inspiring conversations from the voices of various individuals from diverse backgrounds sharing their passion. And until next time, this has been Greg DeShields.
Thank you for tuning in to Something to Say. We trust you found some valuable insights and takeaways that can help you find your passion. Don't miss out on future episodes. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on your preferred platform. We value your feedback and suggestions, so let us know how we can serve you better. Keep the conversation going and stay inspired until we meet again. Take care and happy listening.